Hello, Wofford students. My name is Dr. Katja, and I'm a professor in the math department and the director for Wofford Center for Innovation and Learning. And I want to talk to you today about how fall 2020 might look in the classroom and some tips that will help you be more successful in the classroom. So what are classes going to look like this fall? And you probably have already heard this, but let's just go back over it. So some classes will be in person. Those classes will be mask to mask. So I don't call them face-to-face, I call them mask to mask because they're going to look quite a bit different. Your professor is not going to be walking around the classroom. There's going to be a plexiglass shield in the front of the room in most classrooms. And you're all going to be spaced out 6 feet apart from one another wearing masks. So it's going to look different. Some of your classes will be remote only. So those will be using a combination of synchronous learning, using tools like Zoom, and asynchronous learning, using things like Microsoft Teams and Moodle, Perusal, and other ways that you can learn together, but not necessarily at the same time. And some of your courses are going to be blended. And that means there's going to be a combination of in-person and online. And the reason that we're doing that is to keep the classroom densities low. We want to make sure that we can keep students 6 feet apart while they're in the classroom. And so for the classes that are big enough that you can't be 6 feet apart with all students there, there's going to be some sort of a rotation. So you might see something like half the class meets on Tuesdays and the other half meets on Thursdays. And on the day when you aren't meeting, you would be doing something online or possibly joining via Zoom. So those are some of the different formats that you might see in your classes. So one of the things that we learned when we went remote in spring 2020 was about some of the challenges students faced. And there's a few of these challenges that I think will apply to fall 2020. Your normal student routines and structures are going to look different. The ways that you have of interacting with professors and peers will look different. And you're going to have a substantially different physical and psychological context for learning. And by that, I mean, even if you are on campus, the way that you're on campus, the space that you're in with one another is going to feel different. And we're still in a pandemic. And so, of course, there's going to be a different kind of thought process going on, different psychological context for learning. So what are some things that you can do to help you face these challenges? So I'm going to give you 3 guiding principles. They focus on communicating, on creating structure, and on being prepared for independent learning. So let's take a minute to talk about each of these separately. So when you're working in these online blended mask to mask situations, you're going to need to be a lot more intentional and thoughtful about how you communicate with your instructors, advisors, and peers. Communication is going to look quite different, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. So you want to do things like make a plan with your roommates for when you're going to have uninterrupted time or when you need interrupted time in your dorm room. Reach out to your classmates. You're less likely to bump into them, right, because of social distancing. So make sure that you're intentional about creating study groups that are arranged safely through spacing or by being online. But be thoughtful and intentional, or just by being able to text message with one another when you have questions that come up. Think about ways that you can reproduce that, leaning over to the person next to you and saying, wait, when is that due? So think about some of those ways that you can kind of recreate that experience, even if you can't recreate that exact experience. Find out how your instructors want you to contact them. It may be email, maybe something like a GroupMe, Moodle forums, a Microsoft Teams chat. So different faculty members have set up different modes of communication. So make sure that you have some way of keeping track of your professors, your instructors, and how they want for you to contact them. And ask questions early and often. Don't wait to figure something out about the course content. Make sure that if the instructor's expectation isn't clear, that you ask them about it. Like I said, reach out to classmates and contact your advisors if any questions or concerns come up. So in thinking about structuring your working time and space, First of all, find an approach to organization that works for you. Some people like to have a paper planner. Some people like an online calendar that sets up reminders for you. Some people just like lists. I just want to mark the things off my list. Whatever mode works for you, set it up and go with it. You also want to think about whether you like a daily routine versus taking it one day at a time. One of the things I found interesting in the spring is I had multiple students who like to run for just exercise and stress relief. And some of them really liked to run in the morning because it gave them an energy boost. And so they set up their daily structure so that the running came before everything else to give them more energy. But other students really liked doing it at the end of the day as a reward for the hard work that they'd done. And so that's an example of how you might think of a different structure, and the same activity might be structured in a different way to work for different people. So I kind of alluded to this before. Make a plan for your working space, in particular thinking about quiet spaces for Zoom meetings, taking online quizzes, and taking online tests. Talk to roommates, make sure that it's clear that when you're expecting to have that quiet space in your dorm room, and also be aware that you can reserve library study rooms. If you go to Wofford Library's homepage, under services for students, study spaces plus room reservations, there's a link to reserve a room. And so you can reserve a room in the library. In particular, I think that'll be helpful for times when you're expected to do a test online. And finally, be aware of the challenges that might arise due to the fact that each instructor might be using different tools. So part of the things that faculty have done this summer is learn about a lot of different online tools. And as we implement them, you're gonna be seeing a lot of these different tools. They're not real complicated, and your instructors are gonna give you some guidance, but just being aware of the fact that there's gonna be these differences can be helpful. All right, and finally, being prepared for more independent learning. Remote and blended learning in particular just requires students to do more on their own. So be patient with yourself as you make this adjustment. Ask for help, and not just on what you're learning, but on how you're learning. If you feel like you're understanding things, but it's just not working for you, talk to your instructor about how you're learning, about how you're structuring your time. Talk to your advisor about that. And this is all part of metacognition, thinking not just about what you're learning, but how you're learning. And one thing that can be helpful with this is to reflect on when you do well and when you struggle, and how you can work to reproduce the learning environment that works for you. So if there's a course that you're really doing well in, that things seem to work, how can you take that same approach to learning and apply it to other classes? And finally, think about doing assignments well, not quickly. So think about how you're going to take notes over readings, over videos. Don't watch videos on a fast speed, and look up any points of confusion or note those points and ask about them at or before your next class meeting. All right, so to wrap this up, I want to let you know that your Wofford instructors want you to do well this semester. They have put in so many hours this summer thinking through how you can learn best in this new, unusual environment, learning different tools that will help you learn well. They're really dedicated to your learning. They're aware of the challenges that you might face. They've thought through how they can help you succeed in the face of those challenges. And even though this semester is going to be so different for all of us, the one thing that's going to stay the same is that we want to share the field that we love with you. We want to see you learn and grow. And so just rest assured that we're all working towards the same goal, which is your learning and understanding. Right, take care, everyone, and stay safe.